you need to hear this before you spend another coin, because what's sitting in your pocket right now could be a hidden fortune, and you wouldn't even know it. I'm serious. These are the kind of coins people toss on counters, hand to cashiers, drop in jars, while collectors are quietly fighting over them behind the scenes. Nobody talks about these. Not like they should. And once you see what I'm about to show you, you're gonna want to check your pocket now. This is real auction shock. These coins change everything. And I'm warning you, do not spend these coins. Because each one we go through gets rarer, more dangerous to ignore, and way more valuable. Stay with me, because the first one alone might already be in your hands. Coin number 1. There's a reason some coins look worn out and still make collectors freeze when they see them. Not because they're shiny, not because they're perfect, but because something about them feels wrong, off, almost like they've lived through something bigger than the average coin ever could. That's exactly what happens with the 1925 Buffalo nickel without a mint mark. Most people, they see a faded old nickel. They see something they'd barely think twice about spending. But what they don't realize is that this exact coin was born during one of the most unstable economic transitions in early 20th century America. The country was coming off the roaring highs of the early 1920s, but underneath that growth, cracks were already forming. Industry was pushing harder, mints were under pressure, and coin production wasn't about perfection, it was about speed. And that pressure, it left marks. This isn't just a coin. This is a survivor of a system that was rushing, straining, and wearing itself thin. Now look at the front, the obverse. You'll see the iconic Native American profile. Strong, weathered, almost staring through time itself. But here's where things get interesting. You mentioned a gray spot under the lips. Most people would panic at that. Think it's damage. Collectors, they lean in closer. Because that gray toning, especially when it forms naturally in specific areas, like under the lips, is often a sign the coin hasn't been tampered with. That it's aged honestly. That it hasn't been cleaned, scrubbed, or ruined by someone trying to make it look new. And let me be clear right now, never clean this coin. Ever. You destroy that natural surface, you erase history, and with it, you wipe out serious money. Flip it over. The reverse shows the American buffalo. Heavy, grounded, almost carved into the metal like it belongs there permanently. But here's what most people miss. On coins like this, especially from 1925, the details on the buffalo's horn and the ground beneath its feet often wear down first. Why? Because the dies used to strike these coins were already experiencing fatigue. That means every surviving coin today carries tiny imperfections, slight softness, areas where the design didn't fully strike. And instead of reducing value, these imperfections tell a story collectors obsess over. This is not fiction. Now let's talk about how it feels in your hand, because this matters more than people think. This buffalo nickel weighs exactly 5 grams. Not heavy, not light, but solid. Its diameter sits at 21.2 millimeters, giving it that slightly wider feel than modern coins. Thickness, around 1.95 millimeters. And the girth, smooth edges, no reading, just a clean, uninterrupted rim that feels almost too simple for something this valuable. And that simplicity is part of the trap, because nothing about this coin screams money. It whispers it. Now here's where things get serious. A 1925 Buffalo nickel without a mint mark means it was struck in Philadelphia, the main hub. And you'd think that means there are tons of them, right? Wrong. Because while millions were made, very few survived in original condition. Most were used, worn down, lost, spent during years when people didn't have the luxury to save coins. So when one shows up today in almost fine condition, with natural toning, visible features, and no cleaning damage, it becomes something collectors don't just want. They chase it, quietly, aggressively, emotionally. And here's what makes it even more intense. This specific coin, even without rare errors, has reached auction levels around $188,000. Let that sink in. That's not hype. That's not speculation. That's real money tied to a coin people still overlook. This is hidden wealth, sitting in plain sight. And the scariest part? Most people would still spend it. Do not spend this coin, because once it's gone, it's gone. Now let me give you something most people miss, and this detail changes everything. Collectors don't just look at the date. They look at how the date sits, the sharpness of the numbers, the spacing, the wear pattern around it, even the way light reflects off the surface when you tilt it slightly. Why? Because that's how they know if the coin has been altered or if it's original. Original means trust, and trust means value. If you ever find one of these, the first thing you check isn't shine, it's authenticity. Then condition, then surface. And if you're even slightly unsure, get it professionally graded. Because grading can be the difference between a few $100s and life-changing money. Patience is everything here. People who rush, they lose. People who understand what they're holding, they build silent fortunes. And right now, there's a chance someone watching this is holding one of these and doesn't even know it. But listen carefully, because what comes next is even bigger. The next coin, it makes this one look common. And if you thought this was easy to miss, the next one is almost impossible to spot. But when it shows up, collectors don't hesitate. They strike. Stay with me. Next up, you ever notice how the most dangerous coins don't look dangerous at all? They look tired, dark, almost forgotten. And that's exactly where people make the biggest mistake. Because right now, I need you to think about something most people ignore completely. A 1,923 Buffalo nickel with no mint mark. Sounds ordinary, right? That's the trap. But this one is different in a way that collectors don't talk about loudly. They don't want everyone knowing. Because the moment you understand what you're looking at, you stop spending coins the same way again. And I mean that literally. This isn't just change. This is something that slipped through history during a very specific moment in America, when the country was still shaking off post-World War I economic pressure. Factories were expanding, cities were growing, but the financial system underneath? It was unstable in ways most people never think about. And in that instability, coins weren't made carefully. They were made fast. Fast enough to keep up with demand. Fast enough to keep commerce moving. Fast enough that details sometimes came second. That's where this 1,923 Buffalo nickel was born. And if you've ever held one in your hand, you know what I mean when I say it doesn't feel modern. It feels heavier in meaning than in weight. Let's talk about what you're actually looking at. On the front side, the obverse, you see the Native American profile. Strong, sharp, almost intense. But on the 1923 strike, the details often carry a slightly softer edge compared to later years. Not because of design flaws, but because the dies were already beginning to lose their crispness during production runs. That softening is important, because collectors don't just look for perfection. They look for truth in the metal. Now, in your specific coin, there are brown layers forming across the surface. And I want you to understand something very carefully here. That is not damage in the way most people think. That brown tone is time. It's oxidation. It's environmental aging. It's the coin reacting slowly to decades of air, handling, and silence. And here's the twist most beginners miss. Brown toning like this, when natural and even, can actually increase collector interest, because it proves the coin hasn't been scrubbed clean or artificially altered. Never clean this coin, ever. If you remove that layer, you're not improving it, you're erasing its identity. Now flip it over in your mind. The reverse shows the American buffalo standing firm, grounded, heavy in presence. But in 1923 strikes, you'll often notice something subtle. The buffalo's fur detail starts blending into the fields beneath its feet. That's die wear showing itself again. That's production pressure leaving its signature behind. And collectors, they obsess over that kind of thing, because it tells them exactly how early or late in the die life this coin was struck. Now let's get physical for a second, because this matters more than people realize when identifying value. This buffalo nickel weighs 5 grams. It has a diameter of 21.2 millimeters. Thickness sits around 1.95 millimeters. And the edge? Completely smooth, no ridges, no reading, just a clean, uninterrupted border that feels deceptively simple. Simple is the illusion here, because inside that simplicity is history compressed into metal. Now here's where the 1923 issue becomes more interesting than most people expect. No mint mark. That means Philadelphia production. The primary mint. High output. Millions struck. So why would something so common become something collectors fight over? Because survival is the real rarity. Think about it. Most of these coins were spent during everyday life. Groceries, fuel, travel, bills. They passed through hands during times when nobody thought, I should save this coin for 100 years from now. So almost all of them disappeared into circulation history. What's left today in very fine condition with natural toning like this is a fraction of a fraction. And that's where demand becomes emotional. Collectors don't just want it, they start chasing it. Quiet auctions, private bids, sudden jumps in price when the right specimen appears. And here's the number that changes the tone completely. In top-tier condition, examples like this have reached around $193,000 at auction. Not because of magic, because of scarcity meeting demand at the exact right moment. This is where most people don't realize what they're holding. They think old coin. Collectors think opportunity disappearing. Now let's break down something most videos skip, but this is where mistakes happen. The surface of this coin tells everything. If you ever see harsh shine, unnatural brightness, or a cleaned metallic look, walk away. That coin has been damaged in value, even if it looks better to the eye. Original surface is everything. That brown, layered toning you mentioned, that's what professionals call earned aging. It builds trust in the coin's authenticity. And trust is what drives serious money. Another thing collectors check immediately is the strike detail around the date. On buffalo nickels, the 1923 issue sometimes shows weaker impressions in the numerals depending on die pressure. A strong, readable date with natural wear is often more desirable than a heavily polished or altered one. Tiny detail, massive impact. Now let's talk about why collectors are emotionally drawn to this coin, because this is something people underestimate. It's not just value, it's the idea that something so small survived everything. Depressions, wars, economic shifts, generations of handling, and it still exists in your hand. That creates obsession in the collecting world. Some collectors don't even sell pieces like this when they get them. They hold them. Not because they can't cash out, but because replacing it is almost impossible. That's the psychology behind high-end coin markets. And this coin sits right in that emotional zone. Now, if you ever find one like this, here's what you do first, before anything else. Don't clean it. Don't polish it. Don't try to restore it. Just protect it. Handle it by the edges only. Keep it away from moisture. And if you even suspect it's real and original, get it graded professionally. Because grading turns uncertainty into certified value. And that difference can be life-changing. But here's the mistake people keep making. They wait too long. They assume condition won't matter much. But in this market, condition is everything. A slight surface change, a small scratch, a cleaning attempt, and the value collapses. Patience protects wealth here. Now zoom out for a second. You're looking at a coin that passed through a completely different America. A country still finding its economic balance. A mint system under pressure. A design that would later become one of the most collected in US history. And somehow, this exact piece survived long enough to end up in circulation again today. That's not common. That's rare in a way most people will never notice. And that's why collectors react the way they do when they see one in true fine condition. Because they're not just buying metal. They're buying survival. And this 1923 Buffalo nickel, it survived just enough to become dangerous to ignore. But here's what should really stay in your mind. If this coin already feels rare, the next one makes it look almost ordinary. Because what's coming next isn't just about age or condition anymore. It's about a Buffalo nickel that collectors say almost shouldn't exist in circulation at all. And when you see it, you'll understand why some coins never get spent. They get hunted. Next up, there are coins that look old. And then there are coins that look like they survived something they were never supposed to survive. The 1934 Buffalo nickel with a D mint mark is one of those coins. Because if you understand what was happening in America that year, you stop looking at it like pocket change, and you start looking at it like a survivor of economic collapse. This was the height of the Great Depression. Banks were failing. Jobs were disappearing. People weren't saving money. They were surviving day to day. And in the middle of all that pressure, the Denver Mint was still striking coins as fast as the system demanded. Not for collectors, not for perfection, for survival. And that urgency left fingerprints in metal. Now imagine this coin sitting quietly in circulation today. Most people don't even notice it. It gets mixed in with modern change, dropped into jars, forgotten in drawers. But the 1934 Buffalo nickel with a D mint mark, especially in uncirculated condition with natural brown spotting on the reverse, is something entirely different. Because it carries two timelines at once. One is visible, the other is hidden. Let's start with what you actually see. On the front side, the obverse, you get that iconic Native American profile again. Strong jawline, deep-set features, a design that feels almost carved rather than minted. But on 1934 Denver strikes, the detail often feels slightly compressed, like the coin didn't fully breathe during production. That's not random. That's pressure. The mint was operating under high demand during economic instability, and dies were pushed harder, longer, and further than ideal conditions allowed. And that shows up in the metal. Now look closer at that D mint mark. Small, almost easy to miss if you're not paying attention. But in the collecting world, that tiny letter changes everything. Because it tells you exactly where this coin was born. Denver Mint, one of the key production points during the Depression era. And here's the thing most people never realize. Mint marks aren't decoration. They are identity. Now flip it. The reverse side is where this coin becomes emotionally dangerous for collectors. You see the American buffalo standing firm, grounded into the earth. But in this specific coin, you mentioned something very important: brown spots on the reverse. And this is where people misunderstand value completely. Those brown spots are not automatically damage. In many uncirculated buffalo nickels, especially from the 1930s, those spots come from natural oxidation, forming over decades in stable, untouched conditions. They often signal that the coin has not been aggressively cleaned or mechanically altered. And that matters more than perfection. Because collectors don't trust two clean coins. They trust honest ones. Now let's slow down for a second and talk about what this coin actually is physically. A 1934 buffalo nickel weighs 5 grams. That never changes across the series. It measures 21.2 millimeters in diameter. Thickness sits around 1.95 millimeters. And the edge? Smooth, unreeded, continuous, almost deceptively simple for something carrying this much history. When you hold it, there's no sharpness, no modern precision feel. It's soft around the edges, both physically and visually. Like time has gently rounded its identity. And that's exactly why people overlook it. Because it doesn't scream value. It whispers history. Now let's go back to 1934 for a moment. The United States was still deep in the Great Depression. Unemployment was at extreme levels. Entire families were depending on small wages, barter systems, or relief programs just to get by. In that environment, coins weren't saved carefully. They were used until they disappeared. Which means survival rate for high-condition examples today is extremely low. Now take that idea and apply it to this specific coin, an uncirculated 1934 buffalo nickel with Denver Mint mark and natural reverse spotting. You're not just looking at a coin. You're looking at something that avoided decades of circulation damage, handling wear, and accidental destruction during one of the hardest economic periods in modern history. That's why collectors react differently when they see it, because they understand what it took to survive. Let's talk about the design again, but deeper this time. The buffalo on the reverse is not just an animal. It represents American strength during a time when strength was being tested at every level. In 1934 strikes, the buffalo often shows sharper muscular definition in higher-grade examples, especially around the shoulder and horn. But here's the key detail collectors obsess over. Ground detail. The earth beneath the buffalo's feet. If that detail is still visible in an uncirculated coin, it signals that the strike was strong and the coin was preserved early in its life cycle. If it's missing, that tells a different story entirely. Now let's address something critical. Never clean this coin. Not lightly. Not just a little, not to make it shine. Because cleaning destroys the natural surface layer that collectors use to verify authenticity and originality. Once that surface is altered, even a rare coin can drop in value instantly. Original condition is everything. Even those brown reverse spots, they can be part of that originality story. They show time has been untouched. Now here's where things get intense. Coins like this don't move through the market quickly. They don't appear often. And when they do, collectors don't hesitate. They analyze. They compare. And when everything checks out, uncirculated condition, original surfaces, correct mint mark, they act fast. Quiet auctions, private sales, sudden bidding pressure, because everyone in that space understands the same truth. There are far fewer high-grade buffalo nickels left than people assume. And this 1934 Denver example sits right in that scarcity zone. In top-tier condition, examples like this have reached around $162,000 at auction. Not because of hype, because supply is almost gone. Now here's something most beginners miss completely. Value isn't just condition. It's survival plus originality plus demand at the same moment. Remove any one of those, and everything changes. That's why collectors get obsessive about small details. The sharpness of the date, the clarity of the D mint mark, the tone of the surface, even the pattern of oxidation spots on the reverse. Because those details separate real survivors from altered coins. And here's a mistake people keep making over and over. They assume uncirculated means perfect. It doesn't. It means not spent in general circulation. It can still have natural toning, minor spotting, and surface aging if untouched. And in many cases, that natural aging is exactly what confirms authenticity. So if you ever find something like this, the first move is not cleaning, not polishing, not guessing. It's protecting it. Handle only by the edges. Avoid humidity. Keep it stable. And if there's even a slight chance it's genuine uncirculated with original surfaces, send it for professional grading. Because grading removes doubt. And doubt is what destroys value. Now step back for a second and think about what this coin represents. A Depression-era Denver strike. A coin that survived circulation pressure, economic collapse, and decades of handling. A piece that should have been lost in time, but wasn't. It stayed. And now it sits in a category collectors quietly chase because they know how rarely pieces like this appear in true condition. But here's the part that should stay with you the most. This coin is not even the rarest in the Buffalo Nickel series. There are pieces out there that make this one look almost easy to find. And the next coin we're about to uncover, collectors don't just chase it. They argue over it before it even appears in auctions. Because it's not just rare. It's the kind of coin people swear they've never seen in real life. Stay with me.